Okay, we are going live. This is Jodi Suson, Reverend Jodi Suson, and we are just trying to go live on Instagram as well. Give us a brief moment. Let's see here if Instagram will go live. There she goes. Nice girl. All right, so here we are. This is Reverend Jodi with Suson Essential Self Care, and I am so grateful to have as my guest, Dr. Patrick Porter, the CEO and inventor of BrainTap. A little bit about Patrick before I invite him onto the stage. He is an award-winning author, educator, consultant, entrepreneur, and speaker with 20 years of experience operating the largest self-help franchise in the world. He has become a highly sought after expert within the personal improvement industry, having sold over 3 million of his self-help products worldwide. Apparently, I am having an issue speaking today. So Dr. Patrick has been on the cutting edge of brainwave entrainment technology for 32 years. He was a co-developer of the MC2, the first personal light and sound brain training machine, voted best new gadget of the year. That was 1989 at the Consumer Electronics Show, and his team was voted the best new health app in 2019 at the Consumer's Electronics Show. And I know he also just took another award. His mission here, better a billion brains. And without further ado, let me bring on Dr. Patrick Porter. Welcome.
Hello, Jodi.
So I am going to actually reverse this. There we go, because the book should be in my face and not in yours. So today we are going to speak about the reframe of mental health, which came to me as a download when I was writing my book, Emotional Healing, Toxic Free Living, which is taking up a little bit of the stage right now on my right. And I want to first of all just say thank you very much for endorsing the book. I want to tell people a little bit that I got this download about how we reframe mental health. I was a little nervous about it. And so I flew out to Vegas specifically. I don't know if you know this, but I literally kept on getting signals from the universe. The first signal was December 5th, and 100 black birds landed on the tree to the right of my house. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. And I took a picture. 5 days later, December 10th, I had another 100 blackbirds on my front lawn. And I'm like, okay, birds of a feather flock together. And they wanted me to go to the Redefining Medicine Conference to go see you. And I said, okay. So I hopped a plane and I came to see you, and I presented to you my concept about the reframe of mental health and about how mental health is really a spiritual disruption. And I would like so I'm just setting the stage, and tell me, because I asked you, because I was scared. I was like, well, I know, thank you for endorsing the book, but does this really make sense to you? And you're like, I see it no other way, right? So tell people, if you would, how you view mental health as a spiritual disruption and why it's important to explore our brains from the concept of really also 3 T's, the toxins, traumas, and thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have any of those 3 T's, if you have any trauma, toxins, or thoughts, that's going to block you from your energy. And if you think of source energy, that the energy flows through us and becomes us. So no matter what religion you think you are, the spiritual practices are important in who we are. And this is energy we're talking about. So when you think about what happened to us during things like 2020, when they're shutting down our heart meridians, they're shutting down our heart chakra, all these energy centers, and we can measure this. I mean, it's not something it's just not me saying it. I mean, they're attacking it. And now I just saw on a YouTube video a group of medical doctors saying that now they know that the COVID virus actually eats the pineal gland. Destroys
what?
It. Yeah.
What?
So you're talking about these glands. Obviously, we can live with them compromised, but what they're doing is they're disconnecting us from source energy. So when you think about source energy, it seems a little weird, that a scientist might be talking about source energy, but every cell of your body, the mitochondria works in just like our sun does. It absorbs energy and transmits that energy out into our body as codes. Our DNA, which is 8 billion miles of DNA code sprung throughout our body, it's pulling in light energy and transmitting those codes out into our cells and telling our body what to do. And every 40 seconds, our body is either upregulating or downregulating. Now, if we don't have the physical corresponding, let's say, part to do that, then the code goes, it can't do anything. It's like if I have a telephone and I'm ringing a telephone, but the telephone on the other end is broken, it doesn't matter. I've got to fix that telephone at the other end. So that's why in mental health right now, people think it's a psychological problem. And even though that's my background, the reality is it's more than that. It's a physiological problem and a psychological problem, because the physiological problem will create the psychological problem. The body think of it as an antenna. When I was younger, if I wanted to watch Tiger baseball, just give you an example, because I grew up around Detroit, Michael or I would have to hold on to the antenna so we could see the baseball game. Because we only had 2 stations back then. I mean,
because you and I are about the same age, right? And so for the young people who are listening, go back to the 60s. We had a TV set with rabbit ears. Isn't that what we called it, rabbit ears? And I'm getting things I don't know.
We'd put aluminum foil maybe at the top of it, or you would hold on to it. You are an antenna, and that's what struck me was, we are transmitters and receivers of information.
Right.
So if they're going to shut that down, now where are we getting this information from? They now know that the light from the sun works in our circadian rhythm, sending us codes that tells our bodies what to do. For instance, at 2:00 in the afternoon here, just an hour ago from this call, our body dropped in temperature 2 degrees. No matter where you're at 2:00 in your time zone, your body will drop 2 degrees in temperature. That's your body recycling. At 2:00 tonight, 2 a.m., your body is going to heat up 2 degrees. Now, if your body is dysregulated, meaning that your nervous system isn't functioning correctly, it's not regulating, you could go even lower. So you'd have like low blood sugar, or you could go even higher and you'd start getting the sweats and thinking you're having premenopausal symptoms, or maybe even menopausal symptoms. But the reality is that the body is going through its cleansing cycle. Just like a spin cycle in a washing machine, we all have cycles during the day, and the cells, the glandular system of our body, it moves through our body throughout the day. And if any of those are disrupted, that's why endocrine disruptors and everything they're doing to the immune system, all these things are disrupting the flow of communication throughout our body. Our body is an information matrix that's getting information not only from words we're saying, but from everything.
Everything. I always refer to myself as a walking, breathing antenna, right? Yeah. And then the other thing that you mentioned about how at 2:00 this afternoon, an hour ago, our bodies dropped, I think you said 2 degrees. So isn't that based in traditional Chinese medicine, TCM?
Yeah. I mean, they knew these things. So, our lifestyle was actually, we didn't try to conform the world to us. Whatever the world was doing, we made our world work around it, because it's bigger than us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have good days or bad days. It simply goes through the cycles.
Right. Exactly.
And so so many people are trying to control things that are out of their control. What you can control is take some time to relax around 2:00 in the afternoon, do a reboot. Of course, if you have BrainTap, we always recommend doing a BrainTap session. But if you don't, then do some, maybe the what we call box breathing. Yeah, there you go. You could do some box breathing to get your nervous system regulated, because as we go through the day, hopefully we woke up in the morning on a high energy, high cortisol, dopamine, norepinephrine, all those things we need to wake up in the morning. But by about 2:00, all that cortisol trough is crashed. We need to reboot it. We need to replenish it.
So I agree with you. So like at 1:00 this afternoon, my stress levels were a little high. So what I did is I got myself outside and I started walking until I walked up a huge sweat. right? And I only got like 30 minutes in because I had to come back here, take a shower, get ready for the show. But you know, the thing is, I think one of the issues that I see, Dr. Patrick, is that people are having these experiences and they are so common that they actually think it's normal, but it's actually not. And so they don't think to put on the pause button and do the brain tap, go for a walk, do some breathing, you know, like that. And how do you encourage people to raise their self-awareness around what's happening for them?
Yeah. Well, I tell people that we don't think of habits anymore, because some people think all habits are bad habits. There's not. There's good and bad habits. But think of your life as a ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you get up, you have ritualistic, with the way you brush your teeth, the way you comb your hair, the way you get dressed, all of these things, the way you drive to work. They're all rituals because you do the same thing every day. And if something gets out of, like, let's say the toothpaste isn't all there, or you can't find something, you're going to get a little irritated because we like patterns. So figure out the patterns that are serving you, and then the patterns that aren't serving you, start changing them. And you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because
right. And looking at things differently, because you know, it's the only way that we can grow is if we disrupt the current pattern or reality to get a different result. Right. And actually the brain tap helps with that pattern interrupt. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I love it when people say to me, I just want you to get rid of my stress. I go, well, there's only one time in your life you're going to get rid of all your stress. They call it death. So you don't want to get rid of your stress. What you want to do is you want to adapt to the stress. You want to lean into the stress with skills, resources, and abilities, but you have to plan for those. If you're pretending you don't know, like if you're pretending you're little and you don't have any skills, you don't have any capacity. You know, Deepak Chopra said 97% of what's going to happen tomorrow we know about today. What are you pretending not to know? Be honest with yourself. Figure out the rituals that you're doing that are serving you. Enjoy them. And what I tell people is, at night when you go to bed, this is one ritual that I wish everyone would use. And when you go to bed, take all your little victories, even the smallest ones. Like when you went for that walk and you broke up a sweat and you got that energy to dissolve. That's a victory. Think of that. And that's a skill now. You have an ability. You can tell somebody to do that, right? There's little things like that happen every day. If you start noticing those things, you're going to trigger something in the brain called the reticular activating system. This is a system of the brain that is always looking for opportunities, or it's looking for dangers, or it's whatever you're focused on. So we want to get it focusing on positive things, because the world has actually, research has shown that positive people actually outlive negative thinking people by 6.5 years. So I always tell people, if that negative person's bothering you, don't worry about it. They'll be 6.5 years in the grave and you'll be able to, so, just like, don't try to change them, but be positive about yourself. Now, any negative thing or setback or challenge that happened during your day, think of it as a opportunity to learn. Because if you think anything that happened to you, if for whatever reason, your brain thinks that you are useless, that you're in a wrong place, that you're in the wrong time, you're out of, your brain will then start to try to make that so. It's going to try to make it. One thing about the subconscious, it never makes you a liar. It always makes you factful and true. So when you're saying to yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, or whatever, or whatever you're saying to yourself that's negative, the brain will try to manifest that. So we have to reframe those negatives. And the way you do that is you take all the color out of the scenes, because emotion drives behavior, energy and motion. And if we can take the energy out of the pictures, put it into a picture frame, which means we're freezing it in time, place it behind you, because we all have, most people will say, let's say you had a past relationship or a business relationship that went sour. It doesn't have to be personal, but whatever it is, and you say, that relationship's behind me now. People will just say that. They use language like this because language is a secondary representational system, meaning that the language will tell the brain how to store, organize, and prioritize that information. What we want to do is we want to say the negative information, we want to store it as a lesson learned, not to be repeated, just a lesson learned.
Right. And too much energy. Like, people a lot of times call it a mistake. It's not. It's just a lesson. And there's different energy on the word lesson versus mistake. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about, if you think about you're making mistakes, then your brain goes, I must be a mistake generator. I'm going to make more mistakes.
Right.
But if you say, hey, I learned a lesson from that, and what's really bizarre is the world, the universe, your subconscious, whatever you want to think about, it will keep showing up until you learn that lesson.
Right.
I mean, it
Right?
would just keep going. Once you've learned it, what happens is it's kind of like it completes the cycle. You can go on to the next one. So, but it's important for everyone listening to understand that there is no there. When Rod Hairston, who's a good friend of mine in Austin, he's a trainer, and he says there's no there, which means at the end of the day, you're not going to get a diploma, you're not going to graduate, you're not going to ascend into the clouds, or if you do, congratulations, I want to know what you did so I can do it as well. But the reality is that we're never done fixing. I mean, if you think about even the greatest minds in the world, the greatest ascended masters, and you listen to all these, the spiritual leaders that have ever been here, they're never not growing and developing and learning. There's no graduation. You don't get, it's never done until it's like when the last man's out, we're done.
Graduation is when they have that celebration of life,
yeah, right.
That's graduation. So I want to tie this back to the reframe, because it's so I'm just going to explain a little bit for people who want to have maybe a deeper dive. So first of all, I'm going to frame this a little differently than Dr. Patrick. So when our physical body and our spiritual body are not connected, we are not receiving our divine gifts from source energy. And as Dr. Patrick was saying, we're not getting light codes or what have you. We're just not getting the information, because we have to have a harmony between the mind, body, and spirit to receive all those divine downloads. So it's just another way, tomato.
Yeah. What I like to tell people is, in the spectrum of frequencies, light, sound, and vibration, if we could think of your computer screen, if they're watching it right now, that computer screen was the playing field of the universe, and all frequencies, all light, all sound was there. We don't even occupy one hair's breadth of those frequencies. But guess what? All those frequencies occupy all other spaces and places.
Okay, so, you're going to have to repeat that.
So when you think about,
I want to actually let people understand something.
There's overlapping.
So not only is he a brilliant scientist, but he also teaches at Quantum University. Yeah. So I'm here as a student. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when you think about quantum possibilities, there's only an infinite number of possibilities from one moment in time. That's a quantum perspective. Now, the Earth perspective is there's only, let's say somebody with an addiction, there's only one possibility for an infinite number of outcomes. I have to smoke a cigarette. I have to get a drink. I have to do a drug. I have to do what, so every solution, or a pill for every ill. You've probably heard that before,
Yeah.
But the reality is nothing's fixed in space and time, and everything is overlapping. So just like while we're sitting here, I'm sitting here in New Bern, North Carolina, there's radio stations, TV stations, all broadcasting through me. All those frequencies are coming through me. There's a 5G tower down the road somewhere. There's neighbors with Wi-Fi. All those frequencies are going through me right now. But if I don't have my phone or my device or my brain tuned into that, it doesn't affect me. That doesn't mean they're not there.
Because we get hit with 2 million bits of information every second, and we can only take in, I think, about 124 bits, give or take, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I just read that we get hit with over 2,000 food ads a day. I just read that.
Wow.
He says, why aren't they making good food choices? I said, because the food industry's owning your brain. I'm not looking at that many food ads, but somebody is, and so they got that number from somewhere. It's bombarding us. So when you think about frequency, I love Doug Grant, who's a friend of mine from OHS.
Yes.
He says frequency is what you frequently see. So think of frequency. So what do you frequently see? If you're frequently seeing good things, good vibes, everybody's doing great things, then that's a high frequency. If you're one of those people that's everything's gloom and doom, everything's negative, whatever's going on, then that's a low frequency state. So we want to change our frequency. We want to tune into that dial on the channel that puts us in high frequency states so that we see high frequency. It's not to say those other things aren't happening, but
you're absolutely right. So I'm going to add to that. So it's not about what happens in our lives. It's about our response or reaction to what happens in our lives. And so we can go into fight or flight, right? Or we can pause, take a step back, breathe, and then think, okay, what's the silver lining? What's the opportunity? What's really happening here, right? One of the public service announcements I wanted to do this week, I just haven't had a chance to do it, is I have sensed when I get on to different social media channels, a lot of people are making assumptions about what's happening. You could say politically, non-politically, food-wise, this food has this thing or this heavy metal, and it's not necessarily true. Right. So I'm trying to get people to understand that you really don't want to follow the masses, because that takes you down a path that's not divinely your path. Right. And when we put on the pause button and use the BrainTap, by the way, to do so, it allows you to really understand what's happening, what's real, what's the story, how can I perceive this in a way that allows me to grow and not go into doom and gloom, right? Because I don't see any of those food ads. Of course, I haven't had a TV on since 2013. So yeah.
When you think about the neuroscience and how it talks about it, says when the world is coming at you so fast, all you're doing is reacting.
Yes.
That's a terrible way to live.
Correct.
Because you basically you're frantic and everything's going on. So in NLP, when Bandler was teaching us, we had a saying when we taught people when they were on panics and anxiety and stress, we'd say, pause, break, and breathe. That's the thing. Pause, break, breathe. So what I mean, you pause, you take a break, step away, and breathe. You always have enough time to do that. The person asking you the question doesn't have to have an answer right away. You can breathe, you can stop, you can process, because our senses, even though internally it might seem like forever, we're sitting there, but it might only be a second.
Right.
Because there's no time there. So, but our brain needs to process that information, especially if it's new and different and novel. That means we have to do some neuroplasticity that has to happen in order for us to get the solution. Right now, we're facing things we've never seen before. I mean, they say if we could take our grandparents and set them in the middle of Times Square, they'd die of neuroshock because of all the electromagnetic smog and all the pollution we have and everything like that. Here we are just thriving.
Like, I'm not good there. Chris Fetchula has a question. She says, can you explain the BrainTap? Is it using sound free? And I know the answer, but I'll let you do it. Sound frequency, light frequency, or both? Go ahead.
We're using both. So, and we're also using just frequencies. So we have embedded into the system, I'll start with the sound. We have binaural beats, which is basically two different frequencies, but the brain only hears the difference between them. So let's say I want to do a 10 hertz frequency. I might put 300 hertz frequency in one ear, 310 in the other, and then you hear 10 hertz. Now, the thing about these frequencies, and we've done this in the lab, you can't just listen to a straight frequency. When you see those on YouTube, they don't work. If you listen to them more than 3 times, the brain just treats them like wallpaper. We have an adaptive nervous system, which means it's adapting. As soon as it knows there's no problem there, that's not a danger, it omits it. So if you've ever lived near a railroad track and you hear or train or airplanes, or if you live near a packing plant or a waste treatment facility, eventually the people living there, they don't smell it, they don't hear it, they don't, the basically doesn't bother them anymore. And people go, how can you live here? That sound is so bad, the smell is so bad. And they go, what do you mean? I don't get it. Because the brain is a great filter.
Right. It distorts it and it deletes it.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going we're going to keep the brain guessing. So we're going to use Noget frequencies, solfeggio frequencies, and we're going to use right frequencies. Those are all embedded into the BrainTap session. Now, what we did was we also use biocular lights, which means it's not just lights flashing at Earth frequencies. These are frequencies between 0.5 and 88, but these frequencies match the frequency cadence of being near water, 10 hertz frequency. During the mountains, 7.8 hertz frequency. Or maybe you want to go up and do some gamma training up to 88 hertz frequency. So we depending upon the session and the brainwave you want to train, and we always train multiple brainwaves per session, but there's always one usually that's a primary one. Let's say you want to do gamma, but to get to gamma, we got to take you from beta up through high beta and into gamma. You can't just go to gamma. The brain, that's too big a gap. So the brain is more like an analog dial rather than a digital dial. So what light does, though, by the way, when you think about light, the light is matching the sound frequencies, but it's doing it with light pulses. So in the ears, Dr. Nogier, he's the one who created a science called iridology. And what our doctors would do is they would use lasers in the ear to hit the auricular points that do in Chinese medicine.
Yeah, so, TCM,
yeah. So what we found out was, hey, we can use photobiomodulation, which means I can dump a 20-minute dose of BrainTap is equivalent to a 2-minute dose on a laser because of the photo exchange, because we're talking about light energy exchange. There's an equation for that. And so what happens is when the cell receives that light energy through the hemoglobin, it circulates and finds that cell will absorb that energy and start creating more ATP. So imagine before that light arrived, before using the BrainTap headset, that cell is spitting out 1 ATP. If you think of a clock and the guy's with his arm going around, every time it went to 12 o'clock, it spit out an ATP molecule. What we know now is that it can spit up to 32 times that.
Wow.
Because light bypasses all the digestive tract, all the processes of the body, goes right to the cell, and it starts creating ATP, which is the currency of the body. So I tell people, imagine that you want to meditate and you don't realize that meditation is a lot of neurological work. It takes a lot of energy. That's why a lot of people can't meditate. They fall asleep or their mind wanders. And the reason is that you don't have enough energy in the brain. The yogis, when we studied the ancient traditions in India, all the records show yoga was designed to get people physically fit enough to meditate. Not to stretch out, not to be in shape, the whole thing. And they'll tell you the most important yoga pose is the corpse pose. Because at the end of yoga, when you're just laying there during the meditation part of it, that's when your brain starts to create neuroplasticity. Wow. But a lot of people in America, unfortunately, jump up. They go, oh, this is useless. That's when you do the most. And most people don't understand that when you're sleeping, your brain is actually doing more neurological activity than you are when you're awake. We're talking right now, but when we're sleeping, our brain is actually doing more neurological activities when we're sleeping. That's why people can't sleep. They don't have energy. And it's not energy in the form of a candy bar or, sugars and things like that. It's ATP we're talking about.
So and I use not only your BrainTap, but I use, and I'm finishing up my international certification in photo biomodulation. And, basically that cell is getting charged every single time. It's your powerhouse. And so, like he says, it's bypassing your digestive system. So if you have food sensitivities and you can't get your energy from food, or you can't walk outside because of some issue that you have presently, you want to have a BrainTap because it's going to recharge not only your brain, but your cells. And one of the most beautiful, and I do mean beautiful things about the BrainTap. Patrick, I was going to ask you this question. I think that your voice is naturally at the frequency of 528, which is a frequency of love. But so Patrick's voice is used on most of the recordings, and you have you present as a sense of calm and peace and harmony, which no surprise that one of your emails, I won't say it has the word positive in it, but which I'm like, well, that's perfect. But so we need this in a world where we're overstimulated and there's so much coming at us. We need a timeout. I mean, one of my missions here, Patrick, we have not had a chance to chat. We've both been pretty busy, but I'm bringing my lifestyle program, the functional food program, to corporations. And that's really just the entryway. It's, $4.44 per person per month. And then we bring them the wellness rooms where they have 2 or 3 brain taps in their wellness room. They have PEMF devices. They have essential oils. They have all these things. I designed this concept right before COVID. Oops. Right. Okay. And financially, it makes complete sense, because if your employee is overstimulated, they can't process information and give you the output that you want. And so it's logical to make sure that you take care of your employees. And I know that this is a huge heart space for you too. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the key thing here is that they, just taking it back to science for a moment, what they found out in recovery, because a lot of people think it's go, 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 the American way. For years, it was like, write your goals, do your thing, get up, sleep is for the weak. You can do that when you're dead, all these things. And what they're finding out is that sleep is when you incubate your superpowers. And you should be counting your sleep in the same way you might count any other recovery system. So every day you're going out to do your jobs, whatever that is, whatever you're doing during the day. So any time that you stress out your body, for every minute of stress, you need 2 minutes of recovery. And that includes sleep. So when you're going through your day, if you're not sleeping, the brain is being toxic. Because imagine this, Reverend Jodi, I know you know this, but let's tell the listeners. In 2015, they found a new part of the brain, a new part of the anatomy. I mean, if you go back to 2014, all over the world, any physiology book you look at, the lymph system stops at the neck. There's no mention of the glial lymphatic system, because they didn't know it existed.
Oh, they didn't know it existed. I didn't know that they didn't know it existed.
They just found out, because they only found it out when they started doing brain studies while people were in deep sleep. They only when you reach level 4 sleep. So imagine that. They've been doing physiology, tearing bodies apart for thousands of years, and they didn't know this existed. What else do we have in our human body that hasn't yet been activated? Because we don't know how to activate it or do it. We know that the brain is underutilized. They know that we use 100% of its mass, but we don't use 100% of its potential. There's a big difference. So the brain is lighting up, but it's like, you can have a 100-watt light bulb, but you're only using 10% of it. But you have 90%, but you don't know how to turn it on.
Well, so let me go to that for a minute, because when you said, well, what parts aren't we using? The immediate thing was the pineal gland, right? Which is, for those who don't know, the pineal gland is your spiritual gland. It connects you to consciousness. And what was it at the beginning of the show? You said it's the COVID virus impacted the pineal gland, like shut it off, is basically what you're saying.
The vaccine.
The vaccine shut it off.
Yes. I mean, very few people got injured by the COVID whatever virus. Our body can take care. That's only an envelope virus. Our body's seen envelope viruses forever. But now when they weaponize things and put it in they basically gave it a Trojan horse. So the analogy that I liked is, they said, imagine you're on a football team and you took away the lineman, but you still hiked the ball back to the quarterback. Now there's nobody between the defensive players and the quarterback. They just come and attack the quarterback. That's what's happening, is the immune system doesn't know that they're bad.
Right.
Because they're not being tagged.
They don't have a path. They don't have a path anymore. We broke the pathway. And a lot of times, there's many people have asked me about my actual spiritual journey, like how I awoke. And what people don't realize is I was so committed to God and to hearing him that I literally started channeling everything. Like so it's a muscle. Your brain and your spirit is a muscle that needs to be worked. And so when I was, this is silly, but it just tells you how basic I got. Like if there were clothing out, I would start muscle testing and asking God, clean, dirty, this. And I started asking all these questions all day long until that pathway between my physical, mental, and spiritual body and God was so strong that there was like, I didn't have to muscle test anything anymore, right? Became because you had to work the muscle. And the brain is not being used. And the biggest look, we all have traumas, and I'm not discounting anybody's trauma, but the toxins, I don't want to be emotional, but the poisons and that are in our food and water supply is outrageous. I had I found a document when I was writing the book, and originally I thought I was on 29, or that I had 29 chronic conditions. I had 54. Right, 54, because they put me not on 18 drugs. It was 50 drugs all at the same time. And which is just a great way to kill somebody. And when I went to the document and it said summary of today's visit, okay, it says she's allergic to Fanapt, Abril, whatever these drug names are. I honestly try not to remember these drug names. And what people don't realize is that is not an allergic reaction. That is plain old-fashioned poison control. Okay. Right. And so when you're taking poison, especially a really bad poison is fluoxetine or Prozac. And that was the first poison that they put me on. And what it does, besides calcifying your pineal gland, going back to the brain, it also destroys your tendons. And when I was first misdiagnosed, I complained of pain in my rotator cuffs, which were torn, but nobody would do the x-ray. And so they put me on a drug that would tear my muscles even more for 2 decades. And so if you're listening to this and you want to be connected to God, and you want to exercise your brain, and you want to know what your purpose is in life and your mission, then start by leading with love and honoring your own body as sacred space. Because when we start choosing to honor our body as sacred space, and we find an alternative for anxiety, which can be the BrainTap, it can be lavender essential oil or frankincense. We are not prescribing here, by the way. But the thing is, God provided in nature everything we needed. And what they did is they took what was in nature in the allopathic model, and they extrapolated it, and they paired it with a synthetic, and then they branded it and charged a high price. And even if you're getting your drugs for free, I'm going to tell you the high price always comes. It comes with your life. Do you want to add to that, Dr. Patrick?
Well, I just wanted to tell them just a couple things that maybe to put it in perspective. All of those drugs you're talking about, they have, like, all SSRIs were only prescribed for 2 weeks of use.
Right.
I mean, that's what they were cleared for. So they become toxic. But the doctors don't even learn their own research. And they tell you won't even feel the effects for 28 days. Well, there's something called the placebo effect. That placebo effect means that 40% now, it's up to 40% of anything will work. So if those drugs were to come on the market and really go through a double-blind placebo-controlled study, none of them would have made the market. Right. Because none of them do that. I mean, right. And also like opioids, when people they were only approved for 4 weeks of use. When we did our study in Brazil with Dr. Sidral, we did a study with a graduate student, and we had every person in the study that used BrainTap and the pills, because they're all having surgery, so they all used them for the 4 weeks. Our group, everyone got off it in 4 weeks. The other group was still on them after 6 months.
Well, so because it's a new pathway, one's creating well, yours is disrupting the pathway, right?
Yeah. But I tell people you can't have the pill without the skill. So if you're going to take the pill, you got to find the skill. So if they're giving you a pill, and I love it when you ask somebody, how's your health? I'm doing great. And then you look at it and they got 17 prescriptions. I go, this doesn't look like you're doing great. You go, oh no, that's why I'm doing great. Those prescriptions are making me healthy. No, those prescriptions are making you sick. You're just putting black tape over the engine lights. You know,
right.
You've got to take the black tape off and fix the engine, because eventually that engine is going to crash, and you're not going to know it, because you, just like I told you about, they took away the front lineman for the quarterback protecting him. There's no, when you take the signals out, and by the way, pain is a signal too. When people
Thank you.
I mean, if you don't listen to the pain and figure out what the pain is trying to tell you, the pain should continue to go on. So
yeah, there's I talk about this in the book. I actually have a picture of a signal light. Why is it that people give more attention to their cars when that signal light goes on, which gets them from point A to point B? But when their own personal signal light goes on, they're like, I don't know, it goes in one ear and out the other. I mean, I don't get it. Do you?
Yeah.
You understand human behavior better than I do? I think you do. Go for it.
Right. Well, I think the main thing is that there's not one solution that's just one thing. It's got to be a holistic solution.
Right.
You know, I love BrainTap. Of course, I use it every day. I invented it for myself, and then other people get to benefit from it. But the reality is that I still need to eat well. I still need to move my body. I still need to breathe every day, you know, and not just breathe by unconscious breathing, but do some conscious breathing, like, you know, get my body back trained, because if not, I will be entrained by the world around me.
That's right.
Entrainment's happening all the time. It's not happening just when you put on BrainTap to entrain your brain. You're being entrained when you turn on the television, when you listen to a radio station, when you're around a group of friends, when you're in the mall, when you're driving your car. You know, we're all being entrained. So if we like the entrainment and we're getting a good life, then congratulations, don't change anything. But most of us have at least a couple of things that kind of get to us, and we want to change those. This is where we need to understand that the signals are not good or bad. They're just signals. And you can
tweak things. Yeah. We can tweak things. Now, you were talking about a mutual friend, Doug Grant from Optimal Health Systems. You know, I just got a big box of all of his supplements at my door about 2 hours ago. BFF and glutathione. And, you know, I think that it's really, you know, I know that he puts, I think it's solfeggio frequencies on his supplements. Is that correct? Are you familiar? Yeah. And so people are buying supplementation, let's say at the local store, and not really understanding who's behind that supplement, what frequency. Well, okay. They don't understand what's in the supplement, but then the thing is that it's sitting on a shelf with a ton of electromagnetic frequencies, which is changing the makeup of that supplement. And so I think that it's really important to look at where are you getting your supplements? Are they high frequency? Are they made with real food? And best to have them directly shipped from the manufacturer. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's really important. I mean, there was a professor out of UCLA. She's passed away now. Her name was Virginia Hunt. And she did a study that I really thought was impressive, where she showed, why do we pray over our food? And she showed two things that happen. Number one is you actually raise the energy of the food you're consuming, but you also raise your energy so you can accept the food, so you can match that food and get it going. And she actually showed, because she was really a specialist in something called Kirlian photography at UCLA, and she's the one of the people that helped to create that phantom leaf effect and things like that, where they showed the piece of the leaf that really wasn't there, but the energy signature was still there. It's one of the pictures in quantum physics that everybody talks about, because there's a phantom field around everything. Phantom. I mean, we can't see it with our conscious mind, but they have devices now that can do it.
Measure BioWell and things like that.
Yeah, in the BioWell. So I mean, there's all these different things. So when you think about what's going on in the world around us. We can't just think about it third dimensionally. I always think of, Back to the Future, where he says, Marty, you're thinking third dimensionally. People have to start thinking a little bit higher dimension, because we're not 3D anymore.
No, we're not. And I've been biting it the bit. I wasn't going to say this on the show, but I now that you brought it up, the cat is out of the bag, or in this case, bird. Before I share this, I just want to, Christopher Silva, an acupuncturist out of Illinois, just started using the BrainTap about 2 weeks ago. And he said he noticed an increase in energy and easier sleep. And he said, thank you for the referral from me. And thank you, Dr. Porter, for creating the BrainTap. And so I just want to, Christopher is a great friend and a bright light. So thank you, Christopher. Now I'm going to tell you the story. So this woman here, Chris Fetchula, she was one of the contributing artists to the book. And she is I don't even know what we're going to call her, but she is quite the person. She's quite the energy healer. So Patrick, you may not be aware, you probably are, because I think we mentioned it at the A4M conference. There's parts of my body that just were not healing, right? Mm-hmm. And I know some people made some offer, I can help you. I'm like, I'm thinking it's between me and God right now, because, so Chris and I, Chris Fetchula and I go back lifetimes. And, I got a message. I said, Chris, I think you're the one. I think that something's hidden, right? Something's hidden in the dimension. And I think you have to unlock it. Like it's, so there was some agreement that was made between us 5 lifetimes ago, where my, one of my gifts to see in the realm, in another realm, was hidden, right? Mm-hmm. So as she's unleashing the gift, wait for it, mm-hmm. A huge owl comes flying at me. My birds are flying around the house, a little crazy. And I open up the back door, and there's a huge owl flying straight at me, bringing back to me my gifts. It was part of my soul in that owl. And so we have to really look at, if we want, I'm just going to tell you, you may not get an owl or what have you, but if we continue to ignore all the signals around us, the birds, the insects, they all have spiritual meanings, and they all can communicate very important messages to you if you choose to listen and to listen to God. Maybe you don't want to listen to a bird. That's okay. Find ways to quiet your mind and listen to God.
Right.
I mean, I did scream my head off with the bird coming at me. He was like 5 feet away. Just going to say, he was a big bird.
we love owls. We have out at both of our properties, we have owls that follow us everywhere. We have one that it's really funny. When the grandkids were younger, every time we'd be in the backyard, it would fly around and just watch us play in the backyard. It was a big one. It was pretty crazy.
It was huge. And so the other part is, my mom, when she was alive, her very, very favorite bird was an owl. And so for the past 3 months, I've been listening at 3 a.m., which is, is a spiritual code for spiritual wake-up call, to an owl hooting in my backyard. And I just thought it was my mom coming through. And no, God's like, we're trying to get your attention. So it's really important to pay attention to all these signals. And look, my signals or Patrick's signals, they don't have to be your signals. That you need to go find what your signals are. One of the when you think about what I want people to understand is about the traumas and the thoughts. And because we have a few minutes left, we talked about toxins. Thank you very much. But toxic thoughts and traumatic events are overwhelming for most people in the world. And your BrainTap really helps people to reframe thoughts. And you do that because for people who've ever tried the BrainTap, like I said, you get Patrick's voice. It comes through the app and through his headset. And it allows you the opportunity to reframe things. How did you come up with this? Because I've never asked you that question.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things that I wish I could say that it was divinely inspired. I was taken up into a cloud, and God handed it to me. But it was. I think it was divinely inspired because I believe all encounters are that way. But my dad was a Silva instructor, so we always were working with sound. They called it the Silva sound, 10 hertz frequency, and they had this sound. So I was always intrigued with that. Then I went to school for electronics, and then I wasn't going to help my dad, but then I got sucked into helping him with his seminars and doing those things, and found out, hey, I kind of like that, getting in front of people and speaking and talking. And then one thing led to another, and I was actually going to stop because I wasn't making any money. When you work for your parents, you don't really make a lot of money. So, and I wanted to get out on my own. So I went to Dr. Gilly, who was really the guy that I really worked for. And I said, Gilly, I got to go back to school because this doesn't work for me. And he said, you know what? You need to go to Vegas. You're going to meet somebody there. Her name is Linnea. This guy grew up with Ernest Holmes of Science of the Mind, the guy that started Science of the Mind. Gilly can read your mind. I'm not kidding. And he had a show in Vegas. He was a mentalist, but some of it was magic, but then he could do crazy. Like he told me this, I have a recording of it. I had Cynthia listen to it when I met it. I met a woman in Vegas. Her name was Linnea, just like he said. She introduced me to a piece of technology called the SILS, Sensor Input Learning System. Okay. That system was a big $10,000 system. Remember, I had no money.
Right.
During that visit, while I was in Vegas, I had an extreme experience with the technology. I mean, I was like, I got to have this stuff. And they said, well, it's only $10,000. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get it. So by the end of the show, I went back and they were all at their booth. At the end of the show, they were all bummed out, crying. And I said, what's going on? Did you have a good show? And she says, no, the Dr. Robinson who made this equipment died during that time. She said, and he left none of this information has been left behind. His spouse doesn't know what to do. We have 2 units left, and then we have to go find something to do. And I said, you know what? Where are you going? They go, we're going to Scottsdale, Arizona. And I said, you know what? I have an office in Scottsdale, Arizona. I went to school for electronics. I said, if you bring this to me, we can rebuild it. We can make it better than it was before, like the $6 million man. I said, let's bring it out. So they brought it to my office. And the weird thing was that this is before cell phones. So I lost their phone number. They lost my phone number. And 2 weeks later, a friend of mine, Jerry DeShazo, who's also part of Science of the Mind, he was a practitioner that prayed for people. Mm-hmm. And he called me up. He says, Patrick, I met these 2 people. I didn't put the 2 together until they showed up at my office. He goes, I met these 2 people. As soon as they started telling me, I said, you've got to meet Dr. Porter, or you got to meet Patrick. And so they show up, and there they are, Larry and Linnea, carrying their SILS machine into my office. God made sure that I found out about that SILS. And then as an accident, we were running out of money. And I said, we were doing these little prototypes. And I said, you know what? Why don't you make me 10 of those prototypes? I'll sell them to my patients for, $300 or $400, see if they'll buy them. Well, within a week, I sold them all. They go, you sold all those? I said, yeah. I said, I think I could sell as many as you make. And that's why, so in 1989, we became the best new gadget of the year at the Consumer Electronics Show. And we sold, 500,000 light and sound machines since then. And, they didn't look anything like BrainTap today. I mean, they were really crude. If people remember a store called Radio Shack, I mean, we actually had our own imprompt burner. We actually, that machine that he had, Dr. Robinson had, really wasn't anything. It was basically smoke and mirrors. When we opened it up, I said, there's nothing in here. There's no processing chips. There's no anything. You had to do it all by hand. So it's basically just a flashing light machine. And then I said, but I understood what he wanted to do. And we were able to hire an engineer to help us get it to where we wanted to go. And there's 6 of us. We put together that device. And then I've tried to get out of this business a couple of times over the 40 years that I've been doing it. Right. And then I lose everything pretty much up to a certain point. And then got to go back. And I said, so finally I just gave up. I said, okay, I get it. I'm going to just do this. I'm not going to do it because, I thought it was just something I was doing until I found out what I was going to be doing with my life.
Right.
But I found out this is what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. And I'm sorry, but I have a meeting at the top of the hour. So
yeah. So let me just say thank you. And I have the link actually for BrainTap. Let me just, I'm going to put the link if you want to get a BrainTap. It's in the, I'll have that link shared in a minute. I am beyond grateful, and I'm just trying to see if I can get this in here before we close this show, so we have this with us. Here it is. So, and I'll share the StreamYard. Here we go. On the share screen and the window. So this is actually with me and you and your beautiful wife, Cynthia.
Mhm.
You can visit the website, and I'll put the link in the thread. Look, people, you can just even try the BrainTap app for 2 weeks for free, and see if you like it and go from there. Thank you again. Until the next time, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm on your podcast next month.
Yeah.
So there we go.
All
God
right.
bless
Sounds
you.
good.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bless you too. Thanks for doing this. And everyone, just remember that you're out to better a billion brains. And if you've listened this far, it's your brain. So download the free app. If you don't like it by the 14th day, just cancel it. There won't be charged. There's no charge. So just try it out. 90% of people will start sleeping better within that 13 days.
Yeah.
So,
And Chris is a testimony. Chris just bought it, and he's been using it for 2 weeks, and he's thrilled. He says he's already getting better sleep. And I sleep like a baby using the app all the time. So thank you.
all right, great.
All right.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.